Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday, whether you are joining us live here on the Zoom or you are joining us on the live on Facebook or you're watching the recording. Excited to be here with you guys today. We got a lot to cover in a pretty short amount of time. I promise you guys today, we've been talking about what's going on in our real estate market on a week over week basis, and we've seen how the trends from low inventory to the amount of buyers that are currently in the market to seasonality are affecting our buyer and our seller, our buyers and our sellers and our clients, and how that affects our transactions. And we know that when we're looking at real estate, it's really important to not just look at what the market is doing, but we also have to be really conscious of what is happening in our industry and how is that going to affect us and how is that going to impact us. So there's a couple things that have happened over the last couple of weeks that are going to be really crucial to the impact that they're going to have on real estate. The first of those, and we're going to be covering three, and then if there's time to get through other questions and things like that, then we'll work on that as well. But the three things I wanted to make sure that we touched on today, the first one is going to be the Department of Justice and NAR ruling and what the impact on that is going to be here in the short term, and then what we may be looking at in the long term. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with Prop 19 and what availability or what market and opportunity does that open up for us. And then the last thing we're going to talk about, for those that have been following, we know that Zillow is a major player out in the industry that we've been watching and seeing what they're looking at doing with the residential market. And now we're going to take a look and talk a little bit about what Costar is doing and looking at in the residential market as well, right? They're a big commercial player in the game. So a lot of stuff that we're going to cover very quickly. If there's any questions, please make sure that you drop those into the comments, whether in the chat box here or in the comments on Facebook. Like usual, if I'm able to address it while we're on the call, then I'll make sure to do that. And if for any reason we're not able to get to it now, then I will either do a follow-up or I'll make sure that I answer those questions in the comments as well. The first thing we want to talk about is what happens with the National Association of Realtors and the U.S. Department of Justice. Now, a couple months ago, the Department of Justice kind of opened up a suit and really was looking at, when it comes to the National Association of Realtors and what we do, especially as it relates to CRMLS and what is public and what is not public, there were some concerns on how that affects our consumers. So November 19, right, NAR and the Department of Justice announced that they are essentially coming to an agreement on what changes would be made for the National Association of Realtors in order to better protect the consumer. A couple of the really highlighted items on that. Number one, buyer broker compensation will now be made publicly available. So what does that mean, right? That's a big piece there. We've been in an industry where traditionally, right, if we want to see the compensation that we get on a listing, right, that we get on a listing for representing the buyer on a transaction, well, that's available through the MLS, right? But it's available in a specific part of the MLS that is available only to real estate agents, right? It's not available to the consumer. The concerns that this brought up and why the Department of Justice was looking at this is that they felt that agents have an obligation to provide the information of what that agent is getting paid on behalf of selling a particular property. A couple reasons that they're doing this. On one hand, in terms of the buyer, we know that when we go onto the MLS, there is currently the ability to to actually search the MLS and search for properties on the basis of compensation. Now, if compensation on one hand is 3 or even 4%, and compensation for another property on the other hand is 1%, or I want to say the lowest I've seen has been $1, right? And that's absolutely accurate. There have been dollar compensation listings that are out there. An agent may feel that they don't want to show that particular property to their client. And it's a violation ethically and of our fiduciary duty to not show our clients all of the properties that could potentially be the home for them, right? That property that's listed at $1 compensation to the buyer's agent or 1% compensation to the buyer's agent could be the property that they is the right property for the client. And because of that commission, it causes this sort of disconnect in terms of, whether that property is getting the same level of exposure. Now, on the flip side of that, we know that contractually, when we take a listing agreement, there is an area where we put the compensation amount, but also the compensation amount that is offered to the selling agent, right? That the listing agent is going to sign off on. Now, this is something that unfortunately, right, thankfully for agents that have integrity, and I know those of you watching absolutely have that level of integrity and are communicating to the listing client, the homeowner, what you're marketing the property at. There have been issues in the past where an agent may put a different compensation or do an edit in the compensation on the selling agent part. So this is also meant to combat that, right? It's meant to combat both of those items for clients. So again, everything that this ruling is doing is really meant to protect the consumer, right? That's the Department of Justice's main concern, is protecting the consumer. Now, the second thing that's one of the items, and this is pretty much, it relates very closely to the first, right? Public display of buyer broker compensation. The second item is consumer access to all properties that fit their criteria. Now, what does that mean? That means that a consumer should be given access to every property, irregardless of the compensation, right? Or irregardless of what brokerage is offering that particular property. So it's really meant to not just promote properties that maybe are in-house within a brokerage or have a particular compensation that is being offered, right? That's what's going to be really important about that particular piece. The next piece is going to be the forbidding of buyers agents from representing their services is free. In the past, there's been a lot of marketing that has gone out or that selling agents, buyers agents have put out, saying things like, I'll represent you for free, or why wouldn't you hire me? The seller is gonna pay me, right? Why wouldn't you work with me? My services are free and you want somebody to be on your side, or whatever that marketing might be. That is no longer going to be allowed. Part of the reason being is that it's technically misleading. Our services, whether you are representing the listing or the buyer side, the services are not free, right? Your services are not free. What happens is that a seller offers cooperative compensation, right? That comes from the seller's agents. Now, technically, a seller and a listing agent could offer zero compensation. They could offer $1. We've seen that, right? They could offer 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. We've seen all of those in terms of what gets offered to the selling agent. That's an offer of cooperative compensation. Now, if you are doing a buyer representation agreement, technically there is the ability to actually have your buyers pay for services, right? Now, what are they paying for? Well, you're representing them personally. You really have the fiduciary duty to that particular client that you're exclusively representing. What the cooperative compensation is meant to be is it now as almost as a marketing piece, right? It could be considered a marketing piece. It could be considered a way to drum up demand for a particular property, right? They offer cooperative compensation, and that cooperative compensation could essentially take care of what the buyers would actually pay for the services of the agent, right? That's what cooperative compensation really is. So it's really going to be important that we take these items into consideration. Now, NAR and the Department of Justice are still in a 45-day communication period, right? That started in November, where they're really going to outline all of the specific changes and how each of these changes are going to be enforced. So we're going to see a lot of stuff coming out over the next couple of weeks that are specifically related to this particular government mandated rule change. We're going to get a lot of stuff that gets released by the National Association of Realtors, as well as CAR, and of course our local associations. So we'll be providing more information on this particular ruling as we get it. I know I want to make sure there's a couple other things that I want to make sure we cover today. I am going to be dropping a couple things into the comments and the chat for you guys, right, that are going to be related to everything that we're covering right now. Proposition 19. Proposition 19 was one of the ballots, one of the initiatives that was on the ballot for this past election. Proposition 19 was the only of the 3 real estate propositions that hit the ballot. It was the only one that passed, right? And specifically Proposition 19 covered tax exemptions from reassessment. So let's talk about what that means. There are new rules now established with Proposition 19 that affect what we call tax basis portability, right? Tax basis portability. With Proposition 19, a homeowner that is over the age of 55, that is severely disabled, or whose home was damaged, and not just, small damages, but substantially damaged by either wildfire or natural disaster, they may transfer the taxable value of their residence to potentially a replacement property, a primary residence, right? Not just any property, it has to be a primary residence, anywhere in the state of California, regardless of the value of the replacement residence, right? Now, what does that mean? The value specifically, that's going to be important. So we're going to talk about that because it has to do with if they are buying a higher price property from when they're moving out to, it's going to have an adjustment on the difference in value, right? This is going to be within 2 years of the sale. So they could sell their home now, right? Sell their home now. And so long as they buy a primary residence within 2 years, they're going to be able to transfer over that tax basis. And they can do this up to 3 times, right? Up to 3 times. With the specifically those that have their homes destroyed by fire, there is no limitation for them. So it's a little bit different, right? This was one of the things that was originally a rule. Proposition 60 allowed a sort of tax exemption like this, but it limited it to a principal residence that was within the same county, right? That was Proposition 60. There was a secondary proposition, which was Proposition 90. And what Proposition 90 did is it allowed a transfer of tax basis, but specifically if a replacement property was of equal or lesser value and only one time. So this has really expanded that rule. It's expanded it to anywhere in the state, right? It's expanded it to regardless of whether the property is greater in value, right? With an adjustment on the difference within 2 years, and the fact that it can be done up to 3 times, right? Up to 3 times. So this is going to be really big. We're going to be sharing a couple quick guides on this. This is going to take effect. So I know the main question of when does this take effect? It's April 1st, right? This is going to take effect April 1st, 2021. Here's the other thing as well that we want to note. When we look at the tax basis for something that's of greater value, right? That's important for your clients as well. If they want to upsize, if they want to, move into a higher priced county, if they're looking at whatever it is that they're looking at, they also have some opportunity there to kind of maintain that tax basis on not necessarily the full value of it, but they're going to maintain it on a portion of it, and then the secondary part is going to be assessed on a new tax basis. So that's going to be big as well. Now here's the other part of Proposition 19, right? Proposition 19 also affects rules on intergenerational transfers to where a primary residence is being now transferred or being inherited by someone. It's also going to affect those. Now, 2 dates, guys. The rules on intergenerational transfers. So I said the secondary part, the Prop 19 on the tax basis portability goes into effect on April 1st, 2021. When we look at the intergenerational transfer rules, those apply February 16th, 2021, right? So make sure that your clients are not confused about that, because that's going to be a big piece of this proposition. I will post a quick guide for you in the hub as well on these items, because this is extremely important, and it's really important that you have these conversations with your clients, so that if they are selling, right, or if they're subject to intergenerational transfer, what are they looking at, right? And again, on the financial aspect, you always want to encourage your clients to seek the advice of a tax advisor, an attorney, whatever that might be, right? We don't provide the financial advice. We're just providing them the information. We're real estate agents, not financial advisors. We're real estate consultants, consulting them on the opportunity that they're going to have. We're going to have a secondary, we're going to be having, Louis Lujan is going to do a presentation on this, the government affairs director for the Downey Association, later in the month. So that'll be on our calendar as well, where we're really going to go into this in depth. But I want to make sure that I drop those quick guides, and I wanted to make sure that you had those dates as soon as possible, right? Is April 1st, 2021 and February 16th, 2 different dates. And I know that can get a little bit confusing, right? Now so we covered the DOJ ruling, right? A lot of information there. A little bit on Prop 19. Again, if there's any questions, please feel free to drop those into the chat as well. What I also wanted to talk about is what's going on with a couple of the companies that are in the tech side of things. Now, there was a really interesting interview with Costar, right? So Costar Group is it's technically really in the commercial industry, right? Costar Group is considered kind of the MLS of commercial, right? They're really considered the MLS of commercial. And Costar, that's kind of been their major claim to fame, right? And then you have Zillow, that became a sort of syndication platform for listings that are being marketed through the MLS, get syndicated out to Zillow. Costar today is valued at $35 billion, right? They're valued at $35 billion. That's no small job for a company, right? And Costar founder, and his name is Andy Florence. He's the son of a realtor. He's a Princeton graduate. He actually coded, if you've ever heard of a company called CoreLogic, he was an engineer that actually coded some of that project when he was still in college, right? And it's funny when you look at his story. He founded Costar when he was only 22 years old. Right, he founded Costar when he was only 22 years old. His only job beside that had been part-time bartending in college, right? And now he has a company that's valued at $35 billion. What's most interesting about Andy Florence is that he gave an interview recently, right, about a week and a half ago, where he said that he was ready to take on Zillow, right? Ready to take on Zillow. What does that mean? So if you've watched a little bit of what Costar has done in recent years, Costar acquired a company called LoopNet. A lot of you have heard of LoopNet. LoopNet is really an opportunity for commercial agents or even residential agents can actually just get a kind of listing on LoopNet without actually being in Costar. They can market their properties on LoopNet, and then if they want access to additional features, then they need to go ahead and get Costar, right, and get access to all of the additional data that's available within Costar. Now, in this interview that Andy Florence gave, he said, you know, he recently, within the past 2 weeks, acquired a company called HomeSnap, right, that he purchased for $250 million. That's a major acquisition. Many of you have heard of HomeSnap. What's interesting is that HomeSnap is more of a residential tool than it is a commercial tool, right? So we have a major commercial player, right, that is now acquiring this more residential tool. Now, Costar already owns apartments.com. Costar owns Land America, now HomeSnap, and they are making a play to buy a company called RentPath, which the FTC is actually suing them to stop that acquisition, right? The Federal Trade Commission, because the amount of what they're acquiring, the Federal Trade Commission doesn't want it to be, I guess, more like a monopoly, right? Unfair, yes. And they also own Biz, Buy, Sell, right? So a lot of assets that they've been collecting, but they recently acquired, literally within the past 2 weeks, right, HomeSnap. And Andy Florence has talked pretty blatantly about how he feels about Zillow. In fact, he called Zillow's business model unethical, right? I'm not mad at that, but he called Zillow's business model unethical. He said it was unethical to sell ads on listings. He said, can you imagine allowing realtors to put yard signs on your listings, right? Now you have a listing. Would you let another real estate agent put their sign in the yard of your listing? No. And yet that's what Zillow does, right? They have the listing and they sell the ad space and sell ads and put other agent signs in your yard of your listing. And so as he gave a little bit of you know, his opinion on what's happening, he said this. He said that he plans to spend billions, right? He plans to spend billions on the digital residential real estate space. He believes that the Costar LoopNet business model, right, where brokers and agents can upload listings for free on LoopNet and then pay for tools, dashboard, digital marketing, and other services when they go through Costar, he feels that would work very well in residential, right? He said that he feels that will work very well in residential. Like us, he has a belief that says, and he said it point blank, he said, I promise you're listing your lead, right? You're listing your lead, which is why he feels that why he wanted to purchase HomeSnap. He feels that the HomeSnap app, that its DNA or that its model fits well with what Costar is doing with LoopNet. So this is going to be really, really interesting, right? This is going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. It's going to be really interesting to see how this is going to affect, let's say, the Zillow business model. And it's funny, there was no sort of, I guess he was kind of no holds barred in this interview, right? He really noted that his goal and what he's looking at is, he said, look, he says, I've studied, what Zillow's done, that he studied Rich Barton, right? The founder of Zillow, Rich Barton, who was also in the travel industry, right? Expedia, right? That's Rich Barton has Zillow is not the first time that he's done this, right? He's done this before. But Andy Florence said, he thought of the Zillow business model of selling ads on listings, and he realized that for him, he felt that it was unethical, right? He felt that instead we should be doing enhanced marketing as a way to support the agents, not to take the listings or take that data against it. He said they're not looking at, he said this as well, which I thought was really interesting. He said, everyone thinks we want to replace Zillow. He said, everyone thinks we want to replace Zillow. He said, we don't, because we will not create a $1 billion product putting people's names on the wrong listings. Now, he also said, we'll never create a brokerage firm, we'll never hire brokers, and we will never buy houses and flip them. It's just very interesting to me. I always take what any tech company says with a grain of salt, because Zillow said a lot of the same things, and that, they would never create a brokerage firm, and here they are. That they would never, create an iBuyer, and here they are, right? But I do like, just kind of seeing Andy Florence's vision and what he's looking at doing. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. I highly recommend listening to the interview. I will be sharing it with you guys as well. I think it's a great, it was just a really good tool to kind of see. And it does look like Costar is really going to enter not just the digital real estate space, but that they are really entering this residential market as a competitor for Zillow. and in all honesty, it's about time that Zillow had, some good, somebody to look out for besides just the real estate companies. I truly hope that Andy Florence keeps to his word, right, of really wanting to better support the associates. And it's also interesting to see the path that he's taken in terms of acquiring all of these different data companies, right? Companies like CoreLogic, right, that would really give him an opportunity to compete in that residential space. So this is going to be really interesting. I wanted to bring that to your attention now, because anytime we see major companies that are making moves within the industry, we really have to think about what that means, right? We look at the market trends, and market trends are important, right? Market trends are important because they give us something to anticipate in terms of what is the next market of the moment. And when we look at that, we've been talking about it for a while, right? Some of those market of the moments that we know are coming. Obviously, the financially distressed property sales, we're going to be doing a class specifically on distressed properties on the morning of the 18th. So keep that on your calendars as well. But it's going to be, that's one market of the moment, right? Our absentee owners, especially those that, their tenants are not paying rent. That's an economic trend, but that's also becomes a real estate trend, right? The amount of rent that is sitting unpaid is an economic item, but that also is going to impact our real estate industry over the next couple of years if that was our next segment of buyers, right? If that was part of our next buyers. So where are the next buyers going to come from? Well, that's going to change a little bit, right? That's going to change a little bit over the next couple of years. Those market trends of decreasing inventory, right? That drives pricing, it drives competition. And that's important. And we have to look at that weekly, because if not daily, because it changes, right? It's changing every single day. And we also have to look at what's happening in the industry, right? Because companies like Costar, companies like Zillow, they don't just watch the trend for 1 week and decide, okay, this is going to be the new strategy, or we're going to go spend $250 million to acquire an app like Costar, not Costar, HomeSnap, right? But Costar is not going to go spend $250 million to acquire HomeSnap without studying what they feel is going to happen next within the market, right? These companies have major research teams. They're looking at what Zillow is doing and they're saying, hey, we think that there's a better way, but not only that, we think there's an opportunity here, right? We think there's an opportunity here to make money in the digital real estate space. In order for a technology company to make money, they have to take market share in terms of having eyeballs and having consumers on their pages in order for the real estate agent to be willing to pay to market their listing, right? So it's still a matter of how does the tech company take some of the real estate agent's money by getting between the consumer and the realtor. That's all technology companies do, right? Is they come right in the middle. That's it. Even Costar, right? Costar came in the middle between the commercial property data, right, and the agent. That's all Costar does. And then with LoopNet, in terms of the client that's searching on LoopNet, right, and the listing agent and the data, it's the same thing. Their goal is to get between the two so that you pay up money to be able to have them as your intermediary. The problem is that Zillow went and said, great, now we're the intermediary on a lot of things. And now guess what, agent, we don't need you anymore, right? Guess what, agent, why don't we just pay you to go open the door? Guess what, agent, you know, we can buy the properties ourselves, right? That's what Zillow did. And so it's important that we look at these trends of what's happening in the real estate industry with companies like these that are getting into the game, because they're at the big tables, right? They're at a whole different level of playing. And this is what we look at in terms of how this impacts us. Steve Murray, the founder of Real Trends, who studies all of this, right, and studies the trends, not only at the agent level, but at the industry level, and watches what companies are doing. He said the biggest competitive advantage that a real estate agent has is their personal relationship, right? Is the personal relationship. It's being able to help them to navigate the purchase or the sale of a home, right? To really get close to the people that matter. That's the biggest competitive advantage that we have. Now, technology allows us to do that better. He said the three mistakes that agents and companies make is being dismissive of new competition. I guarantee you that Zillow and Richard Barton is not dismissing, you know, Andy Florence. He is watching what Costar is doing. And I guarantee you that this is what they're talking about right now. He said a company and a person cannot be arrogant of their own strength, right? Cannot be arrogant of their own strength. That's interesting as well, because we look at the MLS, right? The MLS that got so big and became so indispensable. And what happened? The Department of Justice came and said no, and they weren't prepared for it. And now there's going to be some trickle down effects of what comes. Companies like these that then get bought out. And we can't be distracted, right? We can't be distracted because the market feels a certain way right now, or because we're very, very busy. What happens is our mind share gets taken over by what's urgent, and we forget to focus on what's important, right? And the consistency of making those connections with our business and not always looking for the next, you know, shiny object. We really need to look at the consistency in how we get more human with more people. I've said it before, technology should only allow us to get more human with more people, to do more of our fiduciary duty and less of the functionary duty. It's meant to provide leverage so that you can be there with your clients. So that's going to be the conversation. I know we went over a little bit on time today. That's going to be the conversation that we're having, is not just let's look at the trends, but now let's look at, okay, we have the information. We know what's going on in the industry. Now, what do we do next, right? What do we do next? And the biggest thing is this: talk to your people, talk to your clients, find out how they're doing, become what we call local expert, a local economist of choice. We do the language of real estate. We talk about the numbers every Tuesday. Why? Not because, the first time you listen to it, you're not going to get it right away, right? But we have to be able to talk about what's happening in the market. And we don't just want to present numbers to the client. We want them to understand how it's going to impact them. How do things like this impact you? And how do they impact your client so that you can better serve them? So with that, you guys, a lot of information today. I'm going to be posting a couple articles in the links for you guys as well. I'll make sure that I share this video out. We went ahead and recorded it because there was a lot of information that we covered this morning. If there's questions that come up, please, right? You guys know, give me a call, and I'm always happy to touch base. With that, I hope you guys have an absolutely phenomenal rest of your Thursday. Bye, everyone.